Gingrich exposes Paul Ryan's treasonous anti-Trump move. Newt Gingrich says that the failed health care bill, quote, got to be a total mess. Paul Ryan and other Republican leadership just didn't deliver. Let's take a listen here.
Actually, the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Treason, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. I was angrier than I want to really admit publicly earlier today. I'm not as angry now. Now I see an opportunity, and I sense that they're not going to make this mistake again. Please tell me they won't do this again this way.
Well, first of all, you have no idea whether or not they'll make that mistake or invent a new mistake. What
Great.
you do know is that I'm
Great.
being honest. What you do know is that Donald Trump is a very smart guy. He just went through an experience that wasn't what he was told. He had been told that everything was under control, the leadership could deliver, he didn't have to pay too much attention, come in at the very end and close the deal, and it got to be a total mess. Now, I'll guarantee you, if this had been one of his hotels, one of his buildings, one of his golf courses, there'd be a lot of personnel changes tonight. And I think what you're going to see is that he is going to rethink how he approaches the Congress based on this outcome, because it was so totally, utterly unacceptable. At the same time, I think Paul Ryan's at a real turning point. Ryan's a very smart guy. Nobody should take that away from him. And he knows an immense amount about policy. But he's got to decide, in the world of Trump, where you're doing really bold, really different things, is he willing to spend the time and the energy listening to everybody, even when he doesn't agree with them, doesn't think they make any sense? Because only by, we used to use a model of listen, learn, help, and lead. And only by doing this, and you've talked about it some, only by getting everybody in the dialogue, you have a chance of ultimately getting to a majority. And I think this was an example that starting at the top, trying to run it through the system, is not going to work. It didn't work for Boehner, and I don't think it's going to work for Ryan. And so they're going to have to find some new approaches to go back and get these things done.
Okay, let me ask you if you would like this approach. If you brought, like, for example, Reagan relied heavily, and by the way, so did you, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, you did a lot of research for renewing American civilization. You have a great relationship with a lot of these really smart think tanks like the Heritage Foundation. If I was going to start over today, what I would do is I would task Secretary Price. I would have him consult with all of these different think tanks. I would have him consult with the moderates. I would have him consult with pro-life people. I'd have him consult with the Freedom Caucus. I'd have him consult with the study group, and so on and so forth. And then you're the one that uses the analogy, although you got mad at me on TV one night, about the square. And you build within the square what everybody's wish list is, and then you start telling people what's doable and what's not doable, what's contradictory, what's not contradictory. Thoughts?
No, wait a second. First of all, for the audience's sake, I did not get mad at you. I
You
tried to
absolutely
point out
dressed
to you
me down on national television. What are you talking about?
Sean, after all these years, you're way too sensitive. I suggested that
They
maybe
called
you didn't
everything
quite
now.
get it. But here, look, here's the deal. I think that when you remember the two things here. Health is life and death for every American, for their children, for their parents, every American. And it is almost one out of every $5 in the economy. Now, if you're going to start moving something that scale, I think you ought to do it out in the open. I think the more information you get, the more people who participate. You have this doctor in Wichita, for example. He'd never make it through a Harvard, Yale, Brookings Institution study group, but probably they ought to bring him in and give him time in an open public hearing to explain how his model works. I mean, I can tell you that the Sanford Health System in North and South Dakota is a miraculously effective system. Gunderson Lutheran in western Wisconsin is an amazingly successful system. We ought to be looking for glimmerings that tell us, you know, there's a dramatically better future out here, and if we get the right legislation and we do it the right way, we can give every American first 2 months.
Trump has always said the Republicans don't know how to win, and that would teach them. This is Paul Ryan's lesson. We, the people, should be firing Paul Ryan over this. We couldn't have shouted it louder. We want a new, functional health care bill. Instead, we were delivered a limping, beat-up version of Obamacare that no one wanted to support. I don't blame them. Gingrich argues that Paul Ryan is a smart guy, but he didn't use the right approach to get Trump's agenda done. I see Gingrich's point. Donald Trump is a radically new figure for these politicians. He's truly in touch with what Americans want and need. He doesn't kneel down to special interests or anyone else. Instead, he tells them how it will be. Paul Ryan just doesn't have the stones to do the same thing. The Republican leadership isn't used to such straightforward American first policies. They are used to having to beg Obama to even consider what Americans need. That's all changed now, but I guess Ryan's just not the leader he thinks he is. Hannity's metaphor of the square is a perfect idea. Ryan should have gotten those who are really America first to the table, figured out what they'll like to see in the bill, and start building something from the ground up. You don't throw around a bunch of contradictory policies and expect it to make for a cohesive bill at the end of the day. Instead, you get this nonsensical mess. Now that Trump has realized Paul Ryan just isn't up to the task, I'm sure we'll get a real health care bill. Paul Ryan has slowed Trump's agenda down, but nothing can stop it. Do you think Newt Gingrich is right about Paul Ryan? Well, I personally, I don't think we should have a forced bill for health care, but you know, that's me. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching.